So,
Hi.
hospice.
Yes, let's talk about this a little bit.
Yeah, talk to me about what do you know about hospice? And these are just genuine questions.
Yeah.
What's your understanding of what is hospice and who needs hospice?
Okay, so before I experienced this a little bit, I just always thought it was for the very end of life, like the last 2 weeks maybe.
Right.
But I have a feeling it's a little bit more than that.
Yeah,
now.
so that is generally what the perception of what hospice is. A lot of people think that it is only for the last week or 2 weeks. Some people even think it's just for the last couple days. And that's just simply not the case. There is an element of end of life, but a lot of what hospice is truly managing chronic conditions. And so when people come to us, typically they have a couple of different things going on. They've got a chronic condition that is not getting better. In fact, it's getting worse. And what our team does is we come in, manage those chronic conditions so that people don't have to go in and out of the hospital. When people go into the hospital, they're looking for restoration of function. And at a certain point with chronic conditions, we know they're not going to get better. That is what we do. We manage those symptoms of those chronic conditions. And that can be for a long time. By rule and regulation, it is for the last expected 6 months. People can be on hospice for even longer than that. But what we can do for a patient in 6 days versus 6 months is huge. Part of what we do is really educating about what is hospice. And it's not just for the last week or two.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So there is a difference between like hospice care and end of life and palliative care. Yeah.
So what's the big difference between we say end of life care and hospice? What our team can do in 6 days, at that point, it truly is end of life care. We're just helping that person pass. Whereas if we have somebody who calls in early and they say, hey, look, we're struggling with these chronic conditions. We've been in and out of hospital. We're going to specialist appointments. They're saying we can't do anything. That is more what I call chronic symptom management. And so a big part of hospice care is chronic symptom management. Yes, there is that end of life piece at the very end, but that's actually a very small piece of what our team does. So our team of nurses, physicians, social workers, and even chaplains, we work together to keep that patient comfortable, keep that patient out of the hospital, and manage whatever symptoms they have. For example, a patient with congestive heart failure. There are symptoms of that disease that need to be managed. And what do people typically do when they, have an exacerbation, their condition deteriorates? We say, we're calling 911,
Right.
We're going into the hospital. And at a certain point, you've got an 80, 90-year-old person. I think even for young people, it's traumatic to go into ER, right?
Yeah,
especially with
right
COVID
now.
and And so that's what people are typically doing when they need their symptoms managed. Whereas if someone's enrolled in hospice, we know what's going to happen. We can predict what's going to happen in the next day or two or the next week. And we can kind of get the family or caregivers prepped for, all right, when this happens, this is what we're going to do. So instead of, all right, all of a sudden, everything's falling apart, we're dialing 911, you've got a team of individuals that can kind of say, this is what we're expecting. This is what we're going to watch for. And when this happens, this is what we're going to do. And in that way, keep that patient at home, out of the hospital. So that's what I think is a big difference between, hospice and end of life. They're kind of part and parcel, but there's a huge difference between what we're doing 6 days versus 6 months.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm a woman of faith, and my loved one is also a person of faith. How does your organization tend to that?
So I'm a person of faith as well, and that's something that's important for me. And so when I go out and meet with family members, I'll have that conversation. And if that's something that's important to them, then we can get chaplain services started for them. I think one of the unique things that I like to do, and I always ask before I pray with families if they're okay with that. Mm-hmm. When I first knock on that door, you don't know what you're going to walk into, but generally it's a family that is exhausted. Mm-hmm. They don't know what options exist, and they don't know what to do, and they feel stuck. But then being able to say, can I pray with you before I go?
Right.
That can be so comforting to people to know that, there is a God and things happen for a reason. I believe in that, and be able to provide that comfort is huge. And so Sarah, our chaplain, does really a phenomenal job of connecting with patients wherever they're at in their spiritual walk. She's got a great singing voice, and so she'll sing hymns, and that can be really impactful for people too. I think for all of us, it's really about finding what's going to be most impactful for that patient, and how can we minister to that person.
Right.
Yeah.
What makes your organization different from others?
There's going to be a lot of similarity amongst hospice organizations. They're highly regulated. Medicare and Medicaid, they regulate what we can and can't do. And so there's going to be a lot of similarity, but there's also differences. I think there's some really large organizations in West Michigan, and that can be great for some people. I think that hospice is so personal. I run large organizations, and it just happens. People become disconnected. It becomes less personal. Everyone becomes a number, employees and patients the same. And I think that in hospice, you can't do that. And inherently, some of these organizations, I think, have become that. Whereas we've said, I'm going to keep the organization intentionally small. It's much more personal. It's much more impactful, and it's much more relational. I had said earlier that, middle of the night, something happens, you can call in. You actually get me. I like to take those phone calls middle of the night, because that's when patients are in panic mode. I like them to know I can call Aaron middle of the night and he can get a nurse going, or whatever needs to be addressed. We can address it. Whereas you're going to get an on-call service with another organization, you're going to get an on-call nurse. You don't know what you're going to get.
Right.
And I think consistency and being able to know what to expect, you have that way more with our organization, because we're intentional about that.
Right.
That's what we're trying to be, and that's what we are.
Well, what are the steps? What point do I feel like I need to call?
Yeah. I always encourage people to call sooner than they think they need to. It's a conversation over the phone. So pick up the phone, make that phone call. Oftentimes you'll actually get me, and I'll just have a conversation with you. Tell me what's going on. Tell me what you're struggling with. And then again, what are your goals? Where do you want to be in the next 6 months? Where do you want to be in the next year? If we have that conversation over the phone, and if we're the right fit, then I'll come out, meet with the family, again, talk about, all right, what are you guys struggling with? What are your goals? Where do you want to be in the next little while? And just have a conversation. Some of them, I'm not the right fit. And that's okay. I've been in healthcare for a long time, and I can say, all right, well, I'm clearly not the right fit for you, but this might be a good path for you. Even if it's just helping with that healthcare navigation on what are some other community supports that will work for me, then great. That's a good thing. If, however, it kind of looks like I am the right fit, or hospice is the right fit, then at that point, we'll schedule a time for one of our admission nurses to come out. And again, very non-committal. We'll really just do a clinical assessment, kind of see what's going on with this person. We'll request some medical records. Okay. And again, if we're not the right fit at that point, great. I mean, at least you have some additional information, and we're happy to help. If, however, we look at the clinical assessment and say we are the right fit, and if the patient and family wants to move forward in the process, then we can just turn that clinical assessment into an admission right then and there. And when I say admission, that doesn't mean that we're admitting to a facility or anything like that. It's just we're admitting them to our services. The whole process is really geared towards what are you struggling with, what are your goals, and where do you want to go? And if we can help you guys navigate that, then great. And that's kind of what the process is. We try and make it really painless, because oftentimes it is a tough thing to make that call.
Right. All right, going back a little bit.
Yeah.
You had mentioned goals.
Yeah.
What does that look like for a patient?
Each patient's goals are going to be uniquely different. And that's one of the things that's great about hospice is it is so uniquely focused on that patient. Some patients, they just say, my goal is I want to stay at home. I don't want to go into a facility. I don't want to go into the hospital, and we can help them facilitate that goal. One of my favorite goals was a patient. She was 92, and we said to her, if you could do anything for your birthday, for your 92nd birthday, what would it be? And she was a congestive heart failure patient, and she was doing okay, but her goal was that she wanted to ride a bike in the mountains. And we thought, boy, what a unique goal. And I said to her, well, unfortunately, I don't think that your condition will allow you to do that. And we're in Michigan here, of course, and there are no mountains.
Yeah, right.
But we thought about it, and we got a virtual reality headset to her on her birthday, which was the next week. It was just like a cycling video that, she could turn her head, and we put it on her, and she just lit right up.
Did she?
Yeah, yeah.
That's so
What was so I don't want to say funny about it, but she actually thought she was going to fall off the bike. And so we kind of had to stabilize her a little bit, but that was something that was really unique, that, that was what she wanted to do. In any other clinical setting, they'd probably say, well, that's not something that we do.
Right.
But for us, that is one of the things that we'll do. So if that patient's goal is to ride a bike in the mountains,
Figure it out.
we'll figure it out. We'll make it work. Yeah.
I
Yep.
love that.
What do you miss about your mom and your aunt?
Everything.
We're really going to get you going.
Oh wow, you're gonna make me cry. Just everything. The lady told us when she came in. She said your aunt, she's very particular, and it was funny when she said that. I said, yeah, she's like that. She says what she says, and that's it. Like when she said she wanted to go home, and the lady asked her, she said, Miss Hardy, she said, you sure you want to go home under hospice care? She said, I said what I said, and we're not going to talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, that was her. That was her. A lot of times when families go through that, you hear the word hospice, and the first thing, comes into your mind is death. End of life. That's it. There's nothing else they can do. They're sending them home, and, we're just, we're here, they're
feel
there.
like you're giving up.
Yeah, yeah. And my sister, she was there every day with my mom. She was her caretaker. So, yeah, it was hard.
Hospice isn't giving up.
Yeah.
That's another thing that I hear. Hospice is giving up. I think that hospice is changing your focus. And we're going to have the best quality of life that we possibly can with the time that we have left. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.